Good evening and good morning, Ashley. I am Kath, and with me is Gaurav. So we are part of Books and Bytes Philippines. So actually, one of the initiatives of Books and Bytes Philippines is to promote reading and writing in our community. So we are just like starting. We are just like wanted to grow the community. So we tap with different authors and then with different writers so that we can also share it to our community.
Mhm.
Okay. Uh, Good morning, Ashley. Gaurav, as Kathleen said, we've been interacting, and you see, we've been talking to a lot of authors, and basically, we are trying to how it started. Always trying to find a book, and people are not really into printing. And if you go back on Facebook, I recorded a video with few kids asking them if they like reading or writing and things. So that's how it started. And uh, I want to thank you for sparing your precious time and talking to us, and you're sharing your thoughts with us as well as uh, our viewers, our subscribers virtually, so they can get into your head, and then we can share all that. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we should start now with our questions. So we have a lot of questions in store for you. So we are all
Mhm.
excited. Both of us are really excited to to ask you this question so that our viewers can also learn something from this one. So since now we are starting, I would like to ask you what inspired you to write the My Heart of Rice, and is it based on personal experiences or it is based on cultural stories when you grow up? So how this book comes into life?
Great. So thank you for asking. I have a copy with me right now,
Oh
Wow.
for
wow.
anyone who would like to see it. So this poetry collection I started writing in 2018 because I was going through just some personal family stuff. So it really did start with the personal anecdotes. And then I grew the collection to be a bit more universal. And so what I was going through was really difficult as a family
Mm,
situation, and I didn't know how to express myself. Poetry has always been my way of expression, though. And so when I had the opportunity to write this book, I pulled from my most recent work, which is these poems about my home. I was at the time dorming at my university, and so I was away from home, not too far, but not at home anymore. And I thought a lot about my Lolo's cooking
mm,
and how much that brought me home. And like even like going to like the Filipino grocery stores here in LA, and going with my friends and how nostalgic that made me. And then just that feeling of like I really miss kind of this idea of home and family. And so I started with those anecdotes, and the book really begins with all my Lolo's cooking, like how his particular way of like, like making sinigang, and like how I didn't know the difference between like machado and like caldereta because they kind of look the same. Obviously, they have different meats now. I know that, but at the time when I was little, I couldn't tell, and like just all these things, and then it goes from there, those personal anecdotes to more personal anecdotes into my high school time and to college when I started becoming involved with the Filipino organization on campus.
Poetry as a means, and while I was reading about or researching, I knew that you've been expressing yourself by means of poetry. Uh, but like
Mm-hmm.
also, I was intrigued by the title. Means as you showed the book, My Heart of Rice, and rice is
yeah.
synonymous with the Filipino culture. That
Yes.
it's like there's a saying
Rice is
saying
life.
rice is
Rice is
life.
life.
Yeah. No, I went to Amazon, and then I was truly intrigued, and then I told Kathleen that okay, this is like truly a representation of the culture, because rice is very much an Asian thing, that it's a staple diet, and
Mhm.
uh, so it really represent Filipino culture. And you're saying my heart of rice. So how does the cultural representation means, how is it represented in your book? Would you like to elaborate on that for our
Yeah. I first off with the title, I think I just really like hearts in general. Like I always gravitate towards like heart earrings or heart. Well, I'm not wearing them right now, but I usually get heart earrings or like heart necklaces and like heart related things. And so I knew that like I wanted the word heart in the title, and then rice because again, going back to my Lolo's cooking, and so cultural representation in this book is like that's basically the entire thing, and it's really about finding a sense of cultural identity. I grew up in Eagle Rock in Los Angeles. It's a very Filipino community. But then when I went to high school, because I went to Catholic school my entire life, or from grades 1 through 12. And elementary school, like I had like my Filipino friends, and I like went to the seafood city that was like down the street all the time. But then when I went to high school, we moved to the San Gabriel Valley, which is a predominantly Chinese, Vietnamese community, and Hispanic community. And so a lot of my classmates were Hispanic or Chinese slash Vietnamese international students. And so the cultural identity there is just trying to figure out what that cultural identity was, especially at such a integral development period of my life, being in high school from ages of 14 to 18, where it's like, who am I? I don't know. And so a lot of cultural loss there, and not really having a solid sense of what my understanding was of being Filipino. And then in college, that loss was like kind of expounded because I came into the Filipino organization space, and I felt like my experiences were so different from other people's. I didn't really feel very included in many ways. And so it wasn't through my understanding of specifically Filipino American history. There's a long migration story that spans hundreds and hundreds of years that go beyond modern times, that really made me feel connected to what it means to be Filipino and also Filipino American as a whole. And so the whole book is just this cultural identity exploration. And it's in terms of, trying to imbue a little culture in it. I mean, the food is the main gateway, but I do talk about like different like community conditions, like the idea of like hiya and like utang ng loob being there as well. I think are really important, just things to talk about as to like what cultural identity means as a whole, whether that's the good or the bad.
Yeah, actually, it's like really nice that you have mentioned a lot of these cultures and then this kind of utang na loob, because it's really common for Filipinos. So I'm just so curious, like it's really common, like utang na loob. It's like part of the culture. You can really take it away. When someone would really help you, you would say like, oh, you have an utang na loob, so you will pay it. So it's endless. So it's like really good that you've also tackled it in your book, because it's one of the cultures of the Filipinos. So I'm just curious also on my end, like how did you come up or develop this kind of character in the book, and what kind of journey did you undergo in this book? Can you share us a little bit of information?
Sure. So it's a very chronological book. So all the poetry in it starts with me at a young age, just observing my Lolo. And then throughout it's the high school period and kind of like that discomfort that comes from that. The journey basically, so the journey starts with all home life things, and then it kind of moves down towards like elementary, middle school, where like I start to become conscious of identity. And I have like interactions like I remember one time I was with my friends, and we were playing some game, and then for some reason we were separated, and like my Hispanic friend labeled themselves beans, and they labeled us rice, which like now in retrospect, it's like we all eat rice and we all eat beans. So you're 7 years old, and I guess you don't really understand the implications of that. But I remember that was like my first moment of like, oh, are we different? Like, is this what this is about? And so that happened. And so that's kind of like the journey of like consciousness of like, oh, being Filipino is not just from the home, but it's like it can be seen and like and perceived by other people. And then going into high school, kind of like similar experiences, or like, I one of the notes that I always make is like the one and only debut I ever went to was mine. All the other ones I went to were quinceañeras when my friends turned 15. Um, and then the next journey being, yeah, going into the org and kind of having that experience, like disconnect up until like learning about histories and the shared kind of cultural things that we go through, such as Utanaloob. And then kind of then being a bit more critical about like, okay, so although the space exists for Filipinos to like sharing culture together in these affinity organizations, there's still surface that's still very much the surface level. Like, how are these organizations actually in relation to people in the Philippines? Like, how are we still actually connected to our homeland, our motherland? And like, what does that mean? Like all these cultural identities, because there's so much discourse about it, right? Of like this relationship of like Filipinos who like end up being born here, or who like move here at such a young age, and then the Filipinos still in the Philippines. But like, how are we bridging that gap? And that's still something my character, as myself, trying to figure out. And so I'm really happy to be here because it's like, yeah, bridging that gap and bridging those connections. Because at the end of the day, we still kind of have very similar experiences and backgrounds.
That's really, you talked about the Hispanic friends and beans and rice, and we all eat beans and rice. Yeah. So it makes me ask, like, is it, the protagonist you have, did you develop from your real life experience? You said it's based on your experience, but can you walk us through the process of the character development of the protagonist? And means
Yeah,
what
I mean,
actually inspired you? I know it's based on, most of it is based on your real life experiences, and you've taken some creative liberties or whatever to portray that. But can you just tell us the whole process of writing for future writers or people who are trying to pen their thoughts or type their thoughts?
yes. So I would say that the protagonist and slash the narrator really is just me. And it's very much of the process of this particular book is self-expression and a bit indulgent at times, but it's just really kind of going from my perspective. There's not like a strong sense of protagonist development there, but I would say I am working on other I think we're moving advanced here for the interview questions, but I am working on other projects that do have to do with like the protagonist of the story. And that process is very much pulling from real life, like people who are similar to these characters, but also mix matching them and then kind of combining them into this one character. And a lot of my process for like characterization is journaling as if I am the character. I guess the through line here is being what I would think this character would be, or like just journaling the thoughts of the character in order to develop the protagonist. But it's very much trying to be in the head of the character. I did this one exercise during my master's program where we had to think about like what the character would want to wear and what kind of shoes they wear and what kind of person they would be during a good time or a fight. And that really helps develop the protagonist's kind of through line.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So since you have this writing, so can you also give us some idea if you have done any researches for different Filipino traditions, or purely is this book more of reflections of your experiences, or have you incorporated other traditions and cultures of being Filipino?
Yes, yes. So I'm a big research person. So actually, at the back of the book, I do have an appendix. I don't know. I have an appendix, and I do reference. So there's a whole section, chapter 9, forgotten histories, where I do talk about like different Filipino American histories that I was referencing, such as the migration of workers in the 1920s or the settlement in the 1700s in Louisiana. And so I do reference them. Like I have like little bits of paragraphs as a form of research, because I did do research on them and look through, articles. And then also the same for chapter 10 for like the community conditions. I also did research on like yeah, and this kind of like this push towards like the STEM field, and then mental health and the sense of like model minority that exists
Mhm.
in the US for Asians demographics. And so I did like research, and then I have the appendix for there. I mainly focus though on more Filipino American kind of histories and cultural conditions because that's the broad experience that I came from. I didn't really want to speak too much on um, like the Filipino experience in the Philippines because I don't know that and I don't
Mhm.
want to assume that. And so
Mhm.
I just wanted to contain it kind of in my direction, but I wanted to also kind of leave as like notes in the appendix to be like, but do your research. Like there's way more research out
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah.
This book, one of the things that this book really intends to do is not only like hopefully connect people with their cultural identity,
Mhm.
but also give people a chance to go beyond just their own experiences and then look into like histories or cultural conditions and have questions for themselves. And so um yeah, there's a lot of kind of academia that goes into it because I love school. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's evident that you love school. So that brings me to the next question, which is like, as you mentioned that you're journaling and you're also a research-based person. So can I ask more about your writing routine? So do you follow, and first of all, do you have a writing routine?
Mm.
Because how do you, because there are a lot of thoughts, you have to pen it or
Mm.
type it, or, you know, you have to accumulate a lot of thoughts to go through this whole writing process. So, is there a writing routine do you follow? And if yes, how do you get all your thoughts together?
yeah, great question. I would say writing is such a love-hate relationship.
Yes.
Um, and with a love-hate relationship, you want it to be predictable. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So in the in the big picture, I technically don't. I don't. It's always such a struggle for me to kind of just set that 1, 2 hours aside just to start writing and write every day. That is what the experts say I must do. I still haven't done it yet consistently enough. However, I have like in the microscopic level, I do have a process. So once I am in the groove to start writing, um, I typically just word vomit onto the page, and it's just like writing continuously, scribbles on scribbles, whatever comes to mind. Especially when it comes to poetry, I already probably have like a particular line
Mm.
or idea that's sitting in my brain that just pops out of nowhere at the most inconvenient times. I have a poem about that where it's like sometimes it'll pop up during while I'm driving and then I'm almost gonna hit a car. Sometimes it pops up right when I'm about to go to sleep and like I have to turn on my light and like write something down. I always have a notebook next to me. And so the process is like once I can sit down and look at the things that like my mind made up, or I just want to sit down and start writing, I just go. And then I leave it alone for like at least a day. And I'll come back to it and then I edit it. And then I edit it and then I edit it until I think it sounds where it should be or it's where it should be. And then I send it to someone and I'm like, hey, what do you think? Then they give me back feedback and then I edit it again. And so my process is very like formalized, I think, because I used to work as an associate editor for a content writing company, and like we kind of had the same process. But that's always been my formula. Is I always believe that like writing is 20% of the writing, 80% editing, because what
Mm.
you say first is probably not what you want to say at the end, or how you say it at the end. And so that's kind of like the routine I go through. And I'm very big on like the collaborative. Like I love getting feedback and then applying that
Mm.
feedback and then seeing where it goes from there.
Yeah, and speaking of feedback, I've read a lot of feedbacks also in Amazon. So, building on this question, what's the most surprising or meaningful feedback you've ever received for the book, My Heart of Rice?
I would like to butt in here, like, you're on Amazon and on Book Heart or Book and Byte. We've had a lot of American, like, before this, and I
Mm.
said, like, it's Philippines, so we need to get, uh, and we are both divers. Kathleen is also into research, so we get a lot of diving friends. Last time we had somebody who's written a book about diving in
Mm.
Philippines. We had authors. Most of them have been American. Means
Uh,
like
Ah,
Amazon, because when we were researching, we tend to find American Filipino, or like just American means for that matter. Uh, but it's hard to get
someone like Filipino, like
really
it's hard to
Philippine. Like
tap.
we can, and my thing with Kathleen has been we need to bring more Philippine, like really, like So your
mhm,
title, and as she's saying, like Kathleen asked you
Feedback.
about the feedback. So yeah, I want like she said, what's the best? I want to know how much we means. It's definitely rice. It signifies like with the diaspora or the Hispanic and Filipino culture. So how much percentage, if you can give us just a ballpark, like you get Filipino or
Filipino
not the
audience.
diaspora or like yeah, the spread all across the world, or like the
mhm,
Philippine based who would call themselves like full-blooded Filipino, because
mhm,
I'm Indian, and I really have to ask because we have a big diaspora, like
yes,
from
yeah,
the Caribbean, Fiji, South Africa, in the
yeah,
UK, everywhere. So we all call, and then in the Indian Ocean islands and all, they are
mhm,
ethnically they are Indian, but they can be from
Mm.
anywhere. So that
yeah,
way, and
yeah,
then they all culturally they are culturally or ethnically they are Indian.
mhm.
So same way, how many of your authors are like
How many of your
based on the
readers?
Philippine Islands? Because I'm pretty sure they may be all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so first question, best comment, and then second question. Okay,
Mm,
so the best one. So on top of the Amazon reviews and Goodread reviews, I do get a lot of DMs on Instagram. A lot of people who
Mm.
email me, and then some random in real life like situations because I do frequent a lot of like the open mic spoken word
Mm.
spaces here in LA. And so sometimes people will be come to me like, "Oh my God, you're the author of that book," and I just blah blah
Yeah,
blah,
yeah.
or like somebody just gifted it. Like I had one friend who I hadn't met them yet, but then we knew of each other, and like his friend had gifted my book to him already. So when we met, I was like, he was like, "Wait, your name's Ashley?" It's like, "Yes." Like Lanuza, and I was like, "Whoa." But yeah, anyway, that's not a compliment, but anyway, now we're really good friends. We hang out all the time. But anyway, so I think the best comment, oh, there's a lot of them that make me so happy and that fill me with so much joy because that's what I really believe writing should be about is connection. But one of the, I guess, the main kind of theme for a lot of the messages is always going back to your question is the idea of feeling less lonely in the cultural experience because of the diaspora or diaspora. I don't actually know how to pronounce that word. Diaspora. Yeah. And so like a lot of people have come up to me or have messaged me about being like, hey, I've also had this experience where like I grew up as the only Filipino in blank state or with blank people, whether it's Hispanic, it's sometimes it's white, sometimes it's black. Like it's always like usually a Filipino person who didn't have a lot of Filipino friends growing up. And that's a lot of the people that I do want to speak to. Um, and so, yeah, I get messages from them and being like, hey, I really resonated with what you said,
Mm.
whether or not it was specifically the same. It had a lot of similar feelings for a lot of people, of this feeling of like, I was the only one, and now I don't feel like the only one. And so those are the best comments I've ever received. And like, it just fills me with so much joy and purpose and like love, knowing that like other people feel less lonely in their experiences because they were able to read something
Yeah.
like this.
Mhm.
Um, and so going back to kind of demographics, like I do look at the uh, kind of the sales, like where they go. I do get a number of international. I think a lot of them I get from the US for sure, but also the UK and Australia, and Japan. So those are the kind of the core ones I've been
Mm.
getting. I don't think I don't remember if I've had like significant number coming out from the Philippines itself. But yeah, those are kind of the majorities, which now that I'm thinking about like kind of diaspora, like disbursement, those have pretty good Filipino populations as well.
Mm.
I also go to the school in the UK, so I feel like sometimes my name kind of just maybe travels around every now and then. But and then I have family in Australia, so that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, like, was thinking, oh, when I saw it in Amazon, I haven't really seen any Filipinos commenting. I think it's more of those people who live abroad who can also feel the
Exactly.
share the same sentiments as you have, but since you're also living in as a Filipino. So,
Mhm.
can we also ask what advice can you give to those aspiring writers, especially those who have really difficulty in starting how to write? Where would they begin so that they can also, like you, they can also publish a book and then be an inspiration to other writers out there?
Well, it starts with writing. Like just
Yeah.
really like I think a lot of writers, there's a lot of fear of sharing our work, especially when it comes from a very vulnerable place. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm kind of going through that right now with my next poetry collection. It's very personal, and it's really hard to kind of get over that bump of like, what if everybody sees it? And especially one of those kind of cultural things about being Filipinos, you don't want to air out your dirty laundry, right?
Yeah.
And like have everybody know what's your business. But that's as true as it is, and as much as I feel it, there's also times that I learned, especially from this book, being vulnerable and being open and personal allows people to connect with you and see themselves in you. Um, and that's really important to me. And so I'm just trying to get over that bump of like, okay, what is my writing intended to do, and who is it for, and why am I doing this? And that if that reason aligns with you, share your
Mhm.
work, um, because writing is very isolating, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a shared experience. It comes from a place of knowing why you're sharing your work in the first place, and from that direction, like then people will be able to read your stuff, and then you build
Mhm.
that confidence, um, and start developing as something as long as a book, or as something as short as a zine, or just a small little poetry collection. But yeah, that's really the advice I give, is just to start sharing your work so that
Yeah.
people can give you the feedback and the response to give you that confidence, and then keep going from there. Like then you can keep writing a collection. And when it comes to writing a lot, I mean, give yourself time, write as often as you can. For me, I had the privilege to get a scholarship to study in the Netherlands for a few months while I was writing this book. So I spent a lot of my time on the train, and
Mhm.
just like writing on the train and writing. I was very like I was solo traveling a lot, so I was alone all the time. So writing just wherever you can, whenever you can, especially if you can't keep a consistent routine like me. And then finding a publisher is the hard
Mhm.
part, but
Yeah.
the internet does exist. So
Mhm.
so you'll eventually find people. I think another advice I would give, if like you're having a hard time connecting with people to publish with, there's
Mhm.
also like a lot of contests and stuff that are out there that people can apply to. Although that does cost money. But on the other hand, if there are creative spaces that you could be a part of, so like for me, like I've been involved really a lot of with like a lot of Asian American spoken word open mic scenes here in LA. And so a lot of them would know publishers or have publishing houses, to help facilitate that. And so, yeah, it's a long process to even get a book published,
Yeah.
and it's years in the making. And I was very lucky to have found the opportunity when I did. But it all really started when I started sharing my writing. And for me, that was sharing it with my friends and just being like, hey, what do you think? Do you like it? Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, every person who's paying attention to be an aspiring writer is probably already writing. You just need to get your stuff out there and keep going.
Yeah, definitely keep going. Um,
Mhm.
Other thing is now with the advent of AI,
Mhm.
artificial intelligence,
Ah,
and like the author we we interviewed an author who used artificial intelligence to publish his book, and you said publishing is a very tiring process. You have
Yeah.
to go through, trying to publish. So
Mhm.
I want to ask you, what are your thoughts about AI, ChatGPT, and all other, uh,
Mm.
AI-based software where you can, I just popped up on social media, write a book every day, right? Like I
Yeah.
saw that, and then people are trying to sell courses and do like a lot of, uh, they're real people, like, talking to you, I can tell. And then he published his book
Mhm.
with AI. All the thoughts, cover, he designed still himself, and he had the content, but he extensively used AI to, process his thoughts and make them in the form of a book. So how do you see nowadays people can publish a lot of, won't that as readers and book
Mhm.
lovers, and
Mhm.
uh, not against the video-based learning, but when we talk to kids, we ask them, "Do you like to read here in the Philippines?" And then they are now all into video-based learning. So it's a cognitive skill when you
Yeah.
put in your thoughts, because you are making yourself think, and then you write for the, as you said. Um, uh, you may have things like, why should I wash the dirty linen and the public, how should I go, means some insecurities and all that you might have. But yeah, with AI, and everybody has some kind of thoughts, or he's jotted down somewhere, maybe he's doing journaling. So how do you see AI affecting the writing process and the books, and what do you see the future of books, because that's one thing we explore here as Books and Bytes.
Great question. Um, I so I've used AI a few times. I'm not like super like against AI. I think for me, as a writer, it's good as a tool. So I would say like AI is great if like, okay, I have like 500 plot points and I don't know how to organize it. Can you give me like a rough outline?
Mhm.
Or like, okay, this is what I'm trying to say, and no one understands what I'm trying to say. Can you rewrite that? But I really believe that it should be a tool, but not a replacement.
Mhm.
So even if it does kind of, regurgitate what you said in like a smooth, easy to read version, I think it's so important to give the writer's kind of tone to it, because every writer writes differently and they don't all write the same, and it'll be super inconsistent if you have like a bunch of your writing and then like this one AI sentence. And so replacing those words a little bit too, or tweaking them a little bit as well. But
Mhm.
it's true, like I think like sometimes I write things and I'm like, I thought that made sense in my head, but then AI like clarifies it and it's like, oh, that makes a lot more sense now. And so I think it's fine as a tool. I don't, of course, like the idea of it replacing writing at any expense, because I think at the end of the day, like a lot of writing is so connections based, and it's like
Mhm.
this person and this individual in the world had a specific perspective on something and they want to share it with you. How can a computer repeat that? Because if a computer is kind of an amalgamation of like all these other kinds of information. And so for the writers out there who want to depend on AI heavily, like I think my question would be like, um, what then makes you the author of
Mhm.
something if you are not using your own kind of perspective and tone throughout the piece? And so I think it's great as a tool. I think it's good for especially organizing or outlining or doing research, especially. I wouldn't depend on it for research. I always have to
Yeah.
cross-reference,
Yes,
because
yes.
research, yeah, like it's sometimes it isn't not accurate. And especially these days, like there's such a sense of like what is accurate information out there. And so that is my thoughts on currently AI. For the future of AI, I do see it, kind of becoming even more widespread. I mean, there's still pockets of folks who don't use it. Like I had to explain it to my dad the other day because he needed like some help with like writing a letter, and I was like, just go through GPT.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to write this for you.
The
But
easy
it's like
way.
it's a letter. Yeah, the easy way, especially if it's just particular things like, oh, like I
Mm.
just have to tell my landlord like the situation. You don't need to be Stephen King on this.
Yeah.
Um, and so there are things like that, you know, I think are okay to use it for. But as going back to my point, like it'll continue to expand, continue to grow as a tool, and probably, you know, more than a tool in some cases, which like that is why I think the development of also like software that detects AI and the awareness of what AI is really
Mhm.
important. Because again, going back to, you know, my parents, it's like sometimes I get Facebook messages that are like, "This is, look what happened," and it's like that's literally AI generated. Like, no, like, and that's another thing that like educators need to start, if they
Mhm.
haven't already. I mean, I haven't been in a school in a minute, but it's like talking about media literacy, digital literacy, as students are consuming more video content, the understanding of parsing out what actually is accurate information and being literate in that, that is very important, a skill to have. And I don't think reading itself will ever really necessarily go away. Maybe in different forms, maybe not in print, maybe more in digital. But I mean, how else would you communicate kind of words?
Actually, I also really agree that AI should be a tool but not a replacement, because in academe also, or in research, especially when it comes like in my work, like some of the most of the journals or the publishers, they would really know like if this is AI generated or not. So we really
Yeah.
need to make sure, yeah, we can have AI to aid us, to help us in outlining our thoughts or organizing our thoughts, but most especially it should be your own writing. It should be the author's own writing and the thing, so that you can also
Mhm.
connect to the viewers. So I totally agree
Yeah.
with that.
I would just like to add, like as Ashley said, that it's the tone or the human imperfections, like
Mhm.
Mm,
which makes you know, if it is very
perfect.
the very perfectly said, like people
Yeah.
who know me how I write.
Yeah.
So my friend was asking about, because I'm a scuba instructor, about this. I just ran it through ChatGPT and said, and straight away he said to me, "Well, that's not who. Why you sound like a robot?" Because I asked,
Yeah.
he asked me, Gaurav, then I just wanted to make a step by step, like, I just told ChatGPT, can you tell me 5 steps and this, then it comes up. And then
Mm.
he straight away said, "Oh, why do you sound like ChatGPT?" Because this is ChatGPT. I
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not me." Because I was just being lazy and I didn't want to write the
Mhm.
whole thing. So I just, ran it through.
Mm.
But of course, I corrected that and I added my input.
Yeah.
But that's like asking your secretary to write a reply, or then, a draft, and then you just perfect it and send it to someone. Like I work
Mhm.
in the government, and then, you present a draft of something. So human perfect means, my feeling is like, there's a like if you do embroidery. My mom's from Kashmir and she really loves doing embroidery. And when you have really perfect machines which make the perfect pattern,
Mhm.
it doesn't, you don't want to buy that, because you see that's a very
Yeah.
something cheap. And this is the human imperfection of that we still embrace. We can do things much much faster, but we know that, oh, this is handmade, or this has the human touch or the imperfection.
Yeah.
So when I read, I kind of make it out. Anyone who's digitally, like,
Yeah, it's so
living in this
obvious.
world, they know, like, okay, this is not this. This is Ashley Stone.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
your way or style of writing, your favorite authors, or however
Yeah.
they
Mhm.
express themselves. That's very
Mm.
much. I don't think they have to be worried. It just makes you more productive. You can do a lot more research, and then at finally, it's the human imperfections that win. So we can embrace that. The AI. I mean,
Mhm.
that's just my perspective on that. But thank you for sharing
Yeah.
your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you
Uh,
for
Totally.
sharing that.
Totally.
Really rely on AI too much.
Yeah. A little too much. It's a little too much, and especially too like I said, like when it comes around to like images on like Facebook, especially
Mm,
like this
mhm.
discerning like what is real and what is not. Like it's AI
mm,
is like scary, like accurate nowadays. Like I saw a picture of like an actor holding something, and I was like,
uh,
is that real? you know? And so there's like so scary, but it's also really exciting, and it does help like with a lot of kind of lifting a lot of brain power that could be used otherwise into writing, for example. Because I know like back in my process, like a good chunk of my writing, at least when I used to write kind of more prose, was outlining and being like, all right, how is this going to work? And doing all the research for that and creating like a whole outline. And that took me like a whole day because I was just like, okay, and now I don't want to write anymore. But if I could just do that a little bit quicker, then that'll help me kind of, write a little faster. But yeah, definitely a tool used to be with caution. And on top of that, my other note I wanted to add, or my other kind of thing I wanted to say was, yeah, like with digital and with AI, it's so interesting because like because of the internet, we have more kind of connection or availability to connect with the world and with other people, and using things like AI, kind of like what you said is like, both of you said is like losing kind of like that human connection, or and the need of being like the human connection and the kind of imperfect human touch. It's like, why wouldn't we want that? Like in such a disconnected kind of society that we continue to live in, like we want more human connection and more sense of people and humanity. So yeah, briefly.
So now what the viewers can really look forward to your works, or what are your future books or projects? And do you have another book which also have Filipino or other themes?
Yes, so I am working on a second poetry collection. It is about families. It's about parent-child relationships and the psychological theme of attachment theory. And so talking kind of about how one kind of grows up and has a specific relationship with their parents. And it's a bit more broad. I think since my background is being Filipino and my parents are also Filipino, they both were born in the Philippines and migrated in their early teen or mid and late teens, early 20s. I do have like kind of the undertone already, I think. So it's not going to be like purely Filipino, but there's probably going to still be moments of undertone there anyway, because of how I was raised. And so that's my second collection I'm working on. It's really the most difficult one I've ever done because it's so personal and it's about my family, and trying to figure out how they're going to receive that is really hard. And then I'm also working on a book. Well, not a book, but I'm working on a fiction piece, so a fiction novel, and it's a kind of this idea of human connection, and the protagonist kind of going through this journey of like, what does it mean to have to feel purpose in one's life? And then on top of that, my other things that I just generally be working on is like poetry for performance. So I just competed in the Katipunan Poetry Slam, hosted by a mic called the Sunday Jump here in Los Angeles. It's the premier. It's the only really Filipino based open mic space in the country, I believe. And so they hosted a slam poetry competition last weekend, and I was able to place in the top 3. And so kind of continuously working on I'm continuously working on pieces for performance, because that's one of the other ways I like to connect with people is like performing. So yeah.
Congratulations on being like, first of all, participating. That's a big part, and then you being placed in the top 3, or were you the first position?
I didn't win top 1, but I was like, I was third.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And we know, and our viewers, they can find you on Amazon, but where else can they connect with you and your work? Other than that, would you like to share your website or like, the things where people can connect with you?
I am 100% available on Instagram under looking for Ashley_. That is mostly where I post a lot of my things, and I'm probably easy to connect with. I also have a Facebook. It is Ashley Lanuza. I think in the URL, it's facebook.com/Ashley Lanuza. And then I do have a website. It's a Wix website. Um, it's ashleylanuza.wixsite.com/portfolio. Yeah. Also be found on Google. So just Google my name and it'll a lot of things will pop up. So you'll find me there. And then I also on my website I do have like a link at the bottom where like you can connect with me on Instagram, email, Facebook, Medium. So I'm pretty accessible.
Yeah.
Okay. One question popped up while you were saying like this in my mind, and I think you talking about Spanish. Most of you, I mean, most or like your writing is in English, but do you have any Spanish, or do you speak or write in Spanish?
Um, no, I do have a few poems that are like have Spanish lines in them, but not really. I would say like my Spanish. I know I could speak Spanish, because my stepdad before was Spanish speaking only. So growing up, I had to learn how to speak Spanish, and so I can communicate in Spanish, but I wouldn't say I can write very well in Spanish because I had to learn basically to survive and tell him like, hey, can you pick me up at this time, or like, can you come with me to this thing, and then in high school I learned French, so I don't really know. So I could write in French probably, but I don't really write a lot of French poetry.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for giving us your time and for taking this invitation. We are so much grateful because finally we have like a Filipino author also who can be share in our community. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Thank you, Ashley, for sharing your thoughts. I'm pretty sure, like your title, it's very intriguing, and you wanna grab that book. And so people listening to us would head out. Very easy ways to Amazon and probably read by Heart or Rise, and they'll connect, and probably they'll be looking forward to your new book when you're sharing your personal thoughts. And I would really like to thank you also for talking. It was wonderful talking to you, and all the things I could really connect. I was literally I had slept, and Kathleen woke me up because I was so tired after 12 hours of like not all the time diving, but I was out diving, and so yeah. But like it was like it's woken me up. So it was really a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I hope you can visit Philippines and do scuba diving with us.
I know. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll let you know. I'm definitely trying to go super soon because it's been so long since I've gone. And we just had like a big family reunion out here because it was my Lolo's like 80th birthday. And so a lot of his like siblings from the Philippines were able to come, and family from all over. So after I saw, I call her Nana. After I saw my Nana, she was like, "You have to come. You have to come." And I was like, "I know. I miss you so much. I haven't seen you in so long." So I'm really trying to go as soon as I can. I started a new job though, so I'm just like trying to figure out what my vacation will be. But
yeah, specifically in Puerto Galera because the diving here is really nice. It's in Oriental Mindoro. Maybe you want to try diving.
Maybe I tried it a little bit in Hawaii, so I liked it. I was just scared. The tanks are so heavy, like.
But it's really nice. Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you so much for this opportunity,
so
and we're really fortunate that you were able to join us in this interview. So
thank you for having me.
Thank you so
for
much
the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Have a good day.
Bye.